give a big round of applause for Leanora here. Leanora will be talking to us about building a life after burnout and breakdowns. Leanora is a senior digital product and transformation specialist with experience spanning SaaS, consulting, not-for-profit, and the mining industry. She's also a mental health first aid responder, which is awesome, drawing on personal experience to support colleagues navigating burnout and depression. She'll be sharing her lived experiences with burnout, how it shows up in tech, how to seek help, maintain mental health, and build sustainable practices that lets us not just survive but thrive in high-pressure environments. Please welcome Leanora.
Thank you so much for having me today. It's a lot to cover in one talk, burnout, depression and the likes, but it just speaks to all of you coming today, shows me how many people are experiencing this, and so I'm hoping for a lot of nodding heads during our session. Technology changes, we all know that. The expectations continue to grow and pretty much never end. And in a world where there are so many cool things happening, the expectations upon us to deliver get higher and higher. But one thing that never stops growing is how we need to adapt to create ourselves more sustainably and to deliver, to make sure that we can survive this very intense technological world. So today I'm going to be sharing some of my stories about burnout and depression, or breakdowns if you will, and they are quite personal. Some of them are quite personal, so if they are triggering to you, feel free to reach out to me later or seek help from Beyond Blue. But my goal for today is to give you tips so that as we go through the technology industry and the spiral tries to take hold of us, we can survive. And you'll see throughout the slide deck that these images are going to change the whole time. They change every 10 seconds, and they're a journey of me going through a very intense breakdown several years ago before I got to speak here today. So you can have a look at them, they'll just keep changing, hopefully interesting enough for the neurospicy amongst us. So burnout and breakdowns are often considered the same thing, but they are quite different. They might look similar though, and when you're around someone who's experiencing a really hard time, it can be difficult to know what they're going through. But if you've been through it yourself, the way that I like to describe it is burnout is much more to do with the work environment that we are in every day, and depression or breakdowns can come from more chronic environments in our personal lives. But the spiral to go down that mental health journey can start with burnout and very quickly end in a breakdown. And if any of you have been through it, and those who have not, getting back out of that spiral is one of the hardest challenges I think we can face. And I think it's a myth that you'll never get burnout. 1 in 2 people in Australia can experience a mental health issue of some kind during their lifetime. I think it's something like 40% of those are burnout. Can you imagine how many people are in tech and experience it specifically? And I've experienced it many times, way too many times, I think. And it all started when I was in high school, just working my ass off to get really good grades so I could get into a uni that could have a good career and all of that. It starts early, and it's in the pressure of the environment that we're in. And when I went into the media industry, my very first jobs, I experienced a lot of pressure and not a lot of relief, not a lot coming back. And that was one of the indicators to me that it wasn't working as much as I expected. But we're all in tech, and I've worked in tech for the last 7 to 8 years across different product stacks, across different small companies, large companies, and there's burnout everywhere, unfortunately. I understand the common denominator in those topics is me, but I do think it's pretty common for other people as well. And unfortunately, it's hard to recognize when you're in it. It's really slow sometimes. It can be a really gradual downhill into that spiral. One of the biggest times I ever understood it for myself was actually when I'd finished my degree, and I couldn't have any more thoughts. You know, when you're just flat out with all the exams and all the written work, and there's nothing more I can take in. You know, my brain was completely overloaded. That was a sign of burnout. And even taking several months off was not really enough to unpack how that burnout was impacting me. And so I will run you through today some ideas on how I've done it, and you'll see in this image deck multiple different ways that I've tried to tackle it whilst I try to rejuvenate myself, get myself out of the spiral. And in the tech industry specifically, one of the worst times I had burnout was actually working at a startup that very quickly turned into a scale-up, and I was wearing a bajillion hats. I loved it, so that was quite difficult because your passion continues to grow, the expectations do as well, and I wanted to latch on to that, so I was doing a lot more work there. And I noticed that my body was reacting to my burnout. Physically, I was getting sick, and I didn't initially know that my brain and my mind and my gut were so intrinsically linked. That when I was experiencing food-related health issues, it could actually be quite directly linked to the environment that I was in myself at work. And so that was another indicator that it wasn't working. For me, I cry often. Everyone around me knows that. So crying is an indicator. It isn't often for others, it isn't for everybody, and certainly isn't for my husband. He would go into a different reaction. His would be more, stepping back from the problem, avoiding it in some ways. But when you become so avoidant that you're actually kind of disillusioned from the issue, that is another indicator that it's not working for you. And so then when I worked in this startup space, I've gone through all this fantastic journey with the startup, but it was really having an impact on my body and my mind. And it started to have a really big impact on my friendships and my loved ones, because I wasn't able to be present with them the way that I wish that I could be. And so eventually, when I left that job, you'd think that taking away the job took away all of the stressors, and it did to some degree. A lot of those things that were plaguing me in my day-to-day life had been removed, but what hasn't was the repercussion on me and my whole body and my mind. It took quite a long time. I reckon maybe a year of working on myself. And so that's where this 100 days came in. 100 days of self-care to prove to myself that I was the catalyst for change, and that I could come up with ways that would help me feel rejuvenated and take on my next adventure. So when I've now worked in the corporate industry, having left the startup land, corporate industry is a very different pace, but still actually has a huge amount of expectations upon people. And I found that once I had established 100 days worth of ideas of how to look after myself, that taking them into the corporate environment felt like a way that I could make it more sustainable. And so that every time I experienced a kind of a breakdown or a burnout, if you will, the spiral was lessened. So it wasn't gone, but I knew more of my triggers. I knew more ways to help myself. And I also then knew ways to communicate that with others to make it more sustainable. So that, for me, meant I had a new kind of method. And I call that method nourish, then rhythm, and then growth. And it's quite simple in the sense that you start with what is nourishing you, what can actually help your situation. And so I briefly mentioned quitting as one thing to do, but what I actually mean there is identify any stressors in your environment that are within your control. And like a few people in this room, not everybody, I have a home, I have a mortgage now. The idea of quitting seems awesome, but financially, that's a friggin' nightmare. And even if I knew I wanted to quit and that I was experiencing burnout. I may not have the financial means to jump out of my job just yet, and you may also, for a multitude of other reasons, not be able to leave your job. So I want to acknowledge that it can feel like a golden ticket, but it is actually a difficult one. So in this first phase of nourishing, you're looking at maybe what friendships don't serve you, what workplaces don't serve you, what activities in your life are you contributing that you can have influence over that you could limit or eradicate. If you can do that, I think you'll see, some benefit there. But also, we're looking for tips for survival here. And when you're in that survival phase, you need help from other people and you need help from yourself. So my very first tip, apart from identifying what isn't working for you, is I turned to journaling every day. It was a safe space for me to communicate with myself. Every single issue I could think of, I would hypothesize what was working, what wasn't working. I was going to say no judgment-free zone, but I'm very judgy of myself, so my journal is riddled with judgment. But it's safer to go to yourself and to journal than it is with some other people around you. And of course, we all have loved ones, family and friends and partners that we want to turn to. But haven't we also experienced people who have no idea what they're talking about with mental health and have, a bit of a glazed look, or like some people I know and have experienced will just change the topic when you bring up something super personal? That's not safe for you to communicate what's going on. It makes it really hard for you to survive. It actually makes it harder. So journaling was my first thing. Then I sought help, and I wanted to share with you some tips about how to seek help in Australia. It surprises me how many people do not know what services we have, and if you've experienced these, I apologise. You can just take them in your stride. But in Australia, we have some fantastic doctors that you can get in your corner. And with a great doctor who truly listens and understands what you're going through, does more than a prescription, they can actually refer you to psychologists in your area. But to do that, you need something called a mental health care plan. And a mental health care plan is free to get in Australia and will enable you to have 6 sessions right off the bat within Australia. It reduces the amount of money you have to pay out of pocket to a psychologist. I've very rarely experienced them be totally free, but I've had psychologists who were excellent with just a $50 gap. And if you can consider having a $50 payout to a psychologist who would help you navigate you through these enormously challenging issues, psychology is a lot cheaper than depression. A lot cheaper than burnout. So that $50 goes a long way. So with your mental health care plan in check, then you want to look at your psychology. For psychology, I've got a link at the end, but you're looking for Australian Psychological Services, APS. It's a website that will allow you to find locals in your area. And if you've never experienced psychology, I totally understand how people have reservations about it. But what I would encourage you to think about is it's a little bit like dating. You don't know them, they don't know you, but until they know a bit about you, they can't really help you. I'd be surprised if you walked into a psychology session on the first day, got a tip that solved everything and you could just walk out like the movies do. But within a few, you would be able to get some really decent help. And unfortunately in Australia, it can take up to a few months to get that very first session. So what I recommend is you can call those psychologists and have a 10-minute vibe check. Are they the right person for you? If you're heavily analytical, someone who's incredibly emotive probably won't be the psychologist that's for you. But you might be able to find someone who speaks a language that could help you. And whilst you are waiting for that psychology session, if you choose to do that path, you're going to look to online services like Beyond View, Beyond Blue, or Lifeline, or other ones that can do it more in the interim. And if you're lucky to work in a work environment that has an employee assistance program, these can be incredibly helpful to get you through to the psychology stage. And once you're in psychology, and I know I'm talking a lot about this, is because I found it so deeply helpful for myself. what I found is when you're in crisis, obviously they're a great source to go to, but they work really well in the maintenance phase of your survival. And I personally use all 10 sessions every year, no matter what, because I go into them with good or bad things, and I can talk them through and build my own toolkit of survival techniques that will see me through my survival phase of the burnout or breakdown. All right, so we've got our help covered. In the survival phase, what I found is that I wanted to be able to know if I was progressing. This is classic project management. Am I better? Question mark. And so to facilitate that, I actually set up just a very basic tracker, PDF, A4 paper, and just would write down like my habits, you know, sleep, number of hours, quality of day, you know, did I cry, because that's a common thing. Was I fearful of something? Did I connect with a friend? I would just have them listed down the side, and then I write 1 to 31, you know, the dates across a month, and I would just tick, did I did it or not? And it was so unbelievably helpful for me to see what my trends were. You know, we've all done data analysis, we all work in tech. Applying that same logic to yourself is surprisingly insightful, because you can see, are there certain things that happen with family that trigger you? Are there certain things that happen at work that just put you in a mood? Is it that every weekend you're exhausted because you've just done the whole week, you just need to get through, and that's when the takeaways go up, and that's when the exercise goes down, or whatever it is for you? It can help you create a playbook for what you need to individually tackle your burnout or breakdown. And in my case, there's 100 odd examples in this here, but what I really found was I needed to start with just one thing. Whatever that one thing is for you is completely fine, but one thing, doing it for a little bit, getting consistent at it, and then adding the second thing, so habit stacking, was incredibly helpful for me, because I do the first one until I was no longer thinking about it, until it was no longer a punish, and then I would progress to the second and keep going that way. And if you've seen those diagrams, it's like little step ladders, you know. If I relied solely on motivation, I'd be down after like the second or third day. So this was consistency, measurable over time, really, really, really helped me. And there's a book by James Clear that helps with that if you want to look that up. But the reason I mentioned that habit stacking, which was so helpful, is because I would add on the things which all of those healthcare professionals said. Not all of them, let's be real, but I would add them on. And I can tell you so vividly, every single time one of those doctors or healthcare professionals said to do self-care, I was like, honestly, you don't think I've tried that? You don't think I've come in here and at least given sleep a go? Come on. But what they were trying to say, or perhaps I wasn't hearing at the time, was that it's you driving your journey, self-care. It's not someone else. There is no employer who is going to make sure you get enough rest in the evenings. There's no employer who's going to get you out of bed to go on that walk, which you know is going to help you, but is an absolute punish to do. No one's going to take you on that. Just you are. So that tracking helped me see what I was doing consistently and what I wasn't. And that was helpful, because when you stop doing those things that are meant to help you, my health would go down like that. That's when the tears would come up, the frustration would go up. It would be really quite obvious to see. And over the years, I think I've tried a few different foundation, like what's the step one? Because I often get asked that. Is it sleep? Is it exercise? Is it food? I've definitely tried all three. Yes, at the same time, but also over years being like convinced it was one of them. Convinced it was sleep. This is going to solve everything. Just have to get 8 hours. Sleep regimen. It's how do you wake up well? And, I spent $1,000 on a sleep consultant just so he could tell me that I needed to go to sleep and wake up at the same time every day. Thanks. Thanks, mate. Appreciate that. Also, I still didn't do it, even though he said that. So if I did that consistently, that would help. I also tried the food one. Definitely diet plays a huge impact on your physical and mental health. I was saying before that I was physically sick. My gut biome was like literally not okay. If I ate well consistently, that seemed to have quite a positive impact on my health. But nowadays I'm pretty zoned in on exercise as the best one. And I'm not saying hardcore gym, like, sign up today. I'm talking about a walk. And I am talking about a walk in the morning. That solved sleep and exercise. That's a 2-for-1. I'm just sufficient. Come on. So if you could take yourself for that walk, that was really helpful. And as I said, I would just keep stacking them on. I've got my mental health services quite regularly. Once I've got that foundation really set up, that moves us into my third phase of what I do, which is the rhythm phase. I've now got a consistent rhythm that is bringing me energy back, that is helping me sustain whatever it is I'm doing in tech. And I now have some safe outlets of people I can speak to about what I need, some people who are willing to help me. So once you've laid that really strong foundation and it's going in the right direction, you can now move into your growth phase. And by growth, I do not mean extra work. I feel like I've made that pretty clear. We're in a burnout talk, not in an extra work talk. In fact, I would even go so far as to say that in the workplace environment, those things, sick days? You guys ever heard of that? Do any of you use them?
They should be wellness days.
Correct.
Yes.
And in my world, in my line of thinking, as the CEO of my life, I have mental health days. Now, I've never met a business or HR person that would actively say you can take a mental wellness day, but also they can't challenge one if a doctor's note arrives at their desk. So that good doctor that I was referencing earlier, that'll really help you. And they generally don't challenge them unless they're on a Friday or a Monday, because you're taking a long weekend and they think that's a bit sus. And you can't book them in advance, which is super annoying because I told you, efficiency. I need to be planning this shit ahead. But they won't do it. But I can mentally put in my calendar. That's when I know I'm going to be particularly fucked and I would like to take a day then. That will help me survive what I'm going through. So I've blocked that off in my calendar. I'll submit the sick request the day before, happy days. No HR person's ever actually had an issue with me doing this. They just want to know that I'm not taking the piss. And I'm not. I'm trying to actually sustain my mental health so that I can deliver these enormous expectations they have of me all day long. And if I am burnt out, well, that's all of the sick days, plus more and more. Depression, the year I was clinically depressed and needed to go on antidepressants, I didn't work for most of that year. And it took me a very long time to get enough wellness within myself to go back to work. So for them, it's cheaper for me to have the sick day than it is for them to have me not at work. So we've got some toolkits that we're using there. We also have friends in your network who can be quite helpful. Surrounding yourself with loved ones who are able to have some mental health literacy is very good. And I mentioned at the top that sometimes there are people who can't, who don't have it within them. When you're in the growth phase of my 3-step plan to success, you've got a bit more resilience to handle them. At the first stage, absolutely not. That can make you so much worse. But as you progress, you might find that your resilience is now building up again, your health and wellness is going much better, and you can give out more. And I don't necessarily mean at work, but you can also do things like volunteer or be part of your community, or even just take back hobbies that you haven't started in a while. Myself, I'm doing a little bit of art, and the ceramics that I've done in this slide deck was genuinely the last time I did it from working in the tech industry, and that was 2018. And that shocked me when I looked at it. I had to check myself, went and found the box of ceramics, and then found a complete other set of art stuff that I just didn't even remember I had, because that's how long it's been since I've done a hobby. Because that's how much energy I've been giving out at work. I've got absolutely zero bandwidth to give to some other project. And all my creativity, all of my juices flowing, I've been putting into the digital products that I've been making for the last few years. So there was nothing left. So I myself have had to go into that complete rebuild phase multiple times. And because I wanted to progress, because I wanted to be better for myself, I'm looking after my journey, and I really want to encourage all of you to see it as your individual journey. Your hobbies are going to be different, your triggers are going to be different, the people around you are going to be different, the pressures, the things you can and cannot change are going to be different. There's so much that evolves in technology. It's only fair that we evolve as people to move alongside it and to make better products for us and the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that great talk. We do have time for questions. Are there any questions now?
I'm hoping there are a few questions. Oh, perfect.
Thank you very much for sharing that. I know it can be really hard to talk about these experiences. I went through something similar back in 2019, and I did a bunch of research, and I have actually given a DDD talk about burnout as well, similar. In some of my research, I found that Sweden had a study where they found people were still experiencing some of the symptoms 7 years after. And so it's not always a case of, I had burnout, I did some reflection and tried to improve myself, and then I was better.
Totally.
It's not a better, I find even now myself, I still get anxieties years and years later, which I can kind of see are related to what I was experiencing then. But I'm more understanding now and accepting that I don't need to be that everything for everyone person that I thought I was back then.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it for me was becoming more understanding of, realistic about my own abilities and not trying to force myself into things the same way anymore.
I totally agree. And actually I had a good example of that. But definitely it lasts for years, but I even had an example where I was in that clinical depression I mentioned. I've gone on antidepressants. It was a whole thing. It was very, very hard for me. But I decided, I had this brainwave that I should start a business because that's the perfect time to do it. and I was like, let's go do a course on that, because how to be an entrepreneur, Googled it, that's a course, I'll do that. And so I went to the Wave Institute in Melbourne, which is a very fancy uni and teaches entrepreneurship. It was a 1-year super intensive course. The depression that I had going into it wasn't really resolved. I got myself ready enough to pull off the course, if that makes sense. Then I did the course, thought everything was super good, and then at the end of the course, dead. Because I hadn't actually dealt with it. And I didn't even really realise I'd been masking it the whole time. But then in the second phase, I was like, oh shit, no, I've really got to deal with it this time. And that's where this 100 days was. Because it can come up, it can be left put to the side. We had an example earlier in the conference of a woman who has had a pregnancy and then come back to work. That's the kind of thing where you're putting someone else's needs above your own. And if you had experienced any mental health issues before or during or after that, you're still going to have them to do that. You're still going to have them to deal with on the other side. So I think it's very important that it can come back in the sense that if you look at your techniques that help you, these help you in all areas of your life. Even if you were not burned out and you were not depressed, how good would it be to just feel like you had energy all the time? Yes. Don't know what that's like, but come back to me in a few years. So it's very pervasive.
So have you ever yourself or people who you met, like therapists that you met, have they ever told you that maybe it is also needed to take time off from the partner, like for a whole week, maybe just live somewhere else? Not that there's anything wrong with them, but that you just need to be by yourself.
So the question being, Has any psychologist ever said it's your partner, not you?
No.
Because I feel like he has a few issues. You know, I'm just like, to take a break for them.
That's the point. They take it personal, whereas it's not them. I just need time for myself.
No, I get you. I do think it's important to take time for yourself. One of the things I've experienced is a lot of people will ask me if a holiday will solve it, which is a similar idea of can you take a break from your partner, your loved ones, or people around you. Holiday does not fix burnout. Holiday just means you have other time to think about how bad everything is.
You just want to be alone too, so you can.
But you can take a holiday alone.
Cry all the time, as a guy especially, or you want to scream all the time, and you don't want anyone around to be irritated by you. You know that kind of stuff that you don't want anyone else to see, but you as a wild animal, you have it inside you.
Are you asking, sorry to jump in, but are you asking, because I'm curious too, are you asking how you should go about telling your partner that? Like, I need time for myself, it's not you, it's me.
Yeah.
Are you asking, how do you actually tell them that, and is that a good idea? Is that kind of what you're asking?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I absolutely need that. I just don't know how to tell them.
Yeah, it's a good, I'm
Yes.
curious. Sorry.
No, I have all the answers, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I got you. No, I think it's a very important question, and I think it's one that perhaps a psychologist might be best answering. I know for myself and my own relationship that we do have time apart. We do sometimes even sleep in different rooms just to get a mental break from each other. But because I'm a transparent person and because communication is something that I value, I have tried to put that in place with my partner, that this is something I'm going through, or try to share that with him. So I don't have the same scenario in that I don't want him to see. I want him to see so he can be better equipped to help me, but that's just me. I think that your journey will be completely unique to yourself and your situation, and I'd encourage you to seek people who are more familiar with that. And I think actually just from a male, female, or perhaps an avoidance, non-avoidance perspective, I'm not the right person to be saying how to handle it, but communication is how I do it.
Would you accept it as a partner if your partner does?
I would accept it from my partner, because I've told you like a lot about my journey, right? But my husband, if he were here, and I would say it right to him if he were here, he's had a completely separate journey to me, and not even on the same timeline as me, which obviously annoys me because I want us to be, you know, in sync and going at the same time. But his challenges are nothing like mine. And we have different upbringings, we have different work environments, we have different coping mechanisms. I suggested journaling before. He's like, are you joking? I wouldn't fucking journal. No way. Because that's not for him. So if he said to me, I need some space for whatever reason is relevant to him, I do feel that I would accept that, because I love him and I want him to have what he needs for his best mental health. But if he can't communicate that with me, I may not know. And likewise, he may not know that I need some support, some help, or some space, unless I communicate it.
Go away on a work trip. That's the best way. You have to go.
Please.
I've been where you are. So the last time that I burnt out, it was after 6 months, the most insane startup I've ever worked at. And at the time, I was working remotely overseas with my partner. So you're living together, working together, hanging out together. You can see where this is going. And at the point where I was taking my sick leave, and I'm like, I think I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. It's not right for my health. Can we afford for one of us to not work for a period of time, which is always a dicey one. But you've got to, you know your partner better, right? Like, so what we're trying to say is it's not necessarily about getting someone else's answer. You've got to work out how to explain that for yourself. Definitely a psychologist can help you work through what the other person might think or feel, because you don't want it to feel like a rejection, you know, of their help or their capacity to assist you. But the best thing that I could do for myself in that moment was go, cool, the next place that we're going, I'm not working anymore. You're going to go here, I'm going there for a week. I need to just have my own time. Same thing. Have a cry, have a scream, go get drunk, go for a run, go for a swim, or go for a huge hike in the middle of the night in the darkness. Whatever you need to do for you to work out of yourself. But you've got to start with that communication piece.
And I really appreciate both of you jumping in to help tease this out, because it's really nuanced, and the more that individuals in the crowd share how they get through their unique challenges, perhaps it's similar pieces for you, I think that will help you. I think that the community you surround yourself with can really help you figure out what might be relevant for you.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question.
One last thing to add, not a question. The waiting time delay from when you get your mental health care plan to when you can start trying to work out a right psychologist for you. This is not very well known, but there is a place called White Cloud Foundation. They are telehealth first, 6 sessions for free, completely free, and you will get access far faster than to a psychologist.
I love that.
Might be worth adding to your talk to let people know about
certainly.
it. Super duper helpful for
Yeah,
that
yeah,
gap
yeah.
piece.
I love that. I love it. Also, there's a couple of slides here that I'm about to play of some other resources that might be helpful for individuals in your unique journey. One of the ones in there is Brené Brown, Atlas of the Heart. You might not know it, but it's kind of like a dictionary of feelings, of different ways to describe emotions, so that if you can name it, it's something you might be able to get specific help with. Maybe screaming in the pillow is one of the ones in there, I'm not sure.
The Japanese scream into the bathtubs.
Screaming to the bathtub.
Because you can't hear underwater.
I want to hear yourself.
It's in anime all the time. That's why I say Japanese. I watch way too much anime.
And so there's a lot of resources out there. And I would be remiss if I didn't say, hey, how does AI play a role in this? You can't go a day in a tech conference without talking about AI. You can use AI in Headspace. They have AI baked in their tool Ebb, which can actually give you customized guided tours on what you're going through. You can use AI as a tool in your toolkit. I do not recommend it as its own, but when I asked my psychologist, can I mention AI, she said, just as long as you're aware of the risks, good and bad, of using AI. We learn about it all day in the other talks. Why would it be any different if we're applying it to our mental health? But it's a tool and it is worth using. I appreciate all of your time today, and of course feel free to link in with me later. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.
Thank you so much. Small token of appreciation from us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.